Hello and welcome to Scale Stuff. In this week's video, I'm going to be building the 176 scale Airfix Vintage Classics Zondercraft 234 series armoured car. I think these were also known as Pumas, but I'm not sure if that name was only used for the turreted version of this armoured car. I've been after building a few of the strange looking German armoured cars for a while, so I'm looking forward to this build. In the box you get a full colour instruction guide, a small bag of parts, and a basic set of decals. The paint guide for this model is located on the back of the box, and it appears that this kit also comes with figures. A first quick look at the sprues show this is a classic Airfix Vintage Classic. It's clearly an older tooling. Even without knowing what this line of models is about, it has a fair bit of flash to clean up. The detail looks okay, but it's not as good as what would be seen on a newer kit. Some of the parts have numbers moulded onto their backsides, which should make removed parts easy to identify, but you're going to have to watch these and make sure you remove them. As spoilers, I left a couple in and yeah, ruins the kind of finished look of the thing. This is a 2019 rebox of a kit first made in 1964, so the tooling has seen some things in its time. Anyway, onto the build. First thing on the menu is the gun base. There's a little bit of flash to clean up here, but the main thing to watch out for is the placement of this little hole, as the sides are slanted, and with this not in the right orientation, it's going to cause trouble. The fit's a classic old model, a bit vague, but when they dry they'll stiffen up. With the gun base done, it's onto the gun. The gun here has quite a lot of flash and a few ejection pin marks to sort out. This bit of the model is very simple, but be careful when adding the gun screen, as the instructions suggest it's placed further forward than it is. There are pins on the gun shield that allow the screen to be glued to the gun better, so make sure these are actually buffeted up against the gun, and then you know it's in the right place. Gun built, it's onto the main body of the craft. This bit looks simple, but it's tricky. The fit heres are very vague, and I'm just hoping that it all goes together in the next step. I'm not sure if I've fitted this correctly. I think the back panel fits next to the window. Anyway, with the side done, hopefully in the right way, it's onto the other side. After trying to add the two side pieces together, it looks like my hunch was wrong. If you're going to build this at home, this bit's easier if you join both hull side bits together and then just push the base plate down into it with a bit of glue on the sides. Then it's just a case of adding all the little bits and pieces. With the main upper hull in what I hope is the right position finally, I'm going to leave this to dry overnight so it's a bit safer to handle. The next day now, it's time to add the suspension arms. The leaf spring suspension is fairly mindless and easy to add. When you get to the wheel axle arms though, you need to keep an eye on which way they go on. Thick ends go nearest to the car. Pay attention to the axle ends, make sure they all line up parallel to avoid wonky wheel syndrome. With the axles on, I move on to add the fenders. The fenders go on really easy. I'm shocked at how much bigger they make the armoured car look. The thing suddenly gained quite a bit of weight. Finally, it's onto the wheels. The wheels here have a nasty seam line on them that needs to be cleaned up. I'm using a sanding stick to get rid of this. With the wheels cleaned up, I add them to the armoured car. The wheels are meant to be able to move when they're on. The parts are tiny though, and I get the feeling this would make them incredibly delicate if they were moving, so I'm just going to glue mine into place. With them glued on, that completes the main build of this kit. This is how it's looking so far. Now it's onto the painting. For the first coat on this model, I'm going to give it a coat of Humbrol Rattle-Can Desert Matte Tan 237. I know it's not a match for the German rail code of this time, but I'm hoping later washes will darken it down. As always, I'm spraying this up off screen and outside to avoid fumigating myself. With the base coat down, this is how it's looking. Now it's time to add the camo to this little armoured car. I'm going to try and roughly copy the camo on the paint guide. I've not done a blobby green and yellow scheme before. For the green, I'm using Tamiya XF62 Olive Drab. With this dotted camo, slow and steady seems to be the name of the game. But I always like trying out new camo patterns and I'm quite enjoying painting this. Anyway, sometime later, this is how it's looking. I'm going to leave this to dry for a bit so it's safer to handle. Next up, I'm going to be painting the black rubber of the wheels. These parts are a little tricky to get into, but I've painted trickier. Wheels done, it's time for the tank's first wash. I'm washing the armoured car in watered down black. I really love this stage of the build, as I find that washes really start to bring the model to life. Next I'm going to add the decals, so that they're on when the model gets its dirt and highlight washes later on, as the weathering will blend everything together and make it look like one piece of metal rather than it's just had a sticker stuck on it. Decals on, I sort out a few tiny details on the model, like the exhaust and gun breech. Now it's time to give the model a quick highlight. For this I'm using Army Painter Skeleton Bone dry brushed on. This will make the armoured car look a bit dusty and highlight all of the raised edges. Now I'm darkening down the model again, this time using a light wash of BS Dark Earth. This plus the skeleton bone I think gives a really nice dirt effect to a model. Lastly, I revisit the model with more BS Dark Earth, only this time I use it less watered down to put on heavier dust and dirt coat around the wheels and fenders. I also use a sponge here to remove some of the paint in a more subtle, natural looking way. And with that done, I think I'm going to call the model done. This is the finished model. Despite its flaws, I really enjoyed building this little kit and enjoyed building an armoured car for a change. In conclusion, the Airfix Vintage Classics 234 series Armoured Car is a bit of a dated kit, but one that is still fun to build. If you have built anything from Vintage Classics lines in the past, you will already know the score. Flash, some vague floaty fits, and ejection port marks in awkward places. However, the model is still a fairly easy build. Just the instructions lay it down when you're building the gun and interior. Unless you're a complete beginner, you shouldn't have a problem with making this kit, but I think Airfix needs to redraw a few of the instruction steps for this model. I paid £7 for this kit, direct from Airfix. I think this is an alright price for this model. It's a bit small compared to some of the tanks you can get for the same price. Though, I imagine if you want a bit more of a bargain, with a bit of digging, you could pick up one of these kits second hand, quite a bit cheaper. Anyway, that concludes my review of the Airfix Vintage Classics 234 Series Armoured Car. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time though, look after yourself, and I'll hopefully see you on the next video. Goodbye.